Ani, bindigay kinuya.
Hello and welcome everyone. What are we talking about today, Sequoia?
Well, today we're talking all about two-eyed seeing with help from our friend Lydia.
I always use two eyes to see.
No, not like that, silly. Two-eyed seeing is an indigenous teaching, meaning to look at both sides of the coin, Western perspective and indigenous knowledge. When we do this, we start to see things we would have never seen before.
Oh, it's like braiding the two ways of knowing together to create something stronger.
Exactly! In our culture, we see the interconnectedness of everything, from Minodonsak, the insects, to Anungsak, the stars. This perspective taught indigenous people to be good caretakers of the land. On the other hand, Western culture looks through a much smaller lens and doesn't always see the bigger picture or interconnectedness of everything. Now, this isn't a bad thing, it's just a different perspective. Western culture has made some revolutionary discoveries that have taught us a ton. These two perspectives, when working together, see things holistically, create new ideas, and solve problems in a whole new way.
Okay, but how do I apply that to my life?
Climate change is a great example. As Anishinaabe people, we believe to not take more than what we need. But in our Western culture, we view consumerism as a good thing. But the more you buy, the more you throw away. So an alternative using the two-eyed pedagogy would be shop local, forage for native foods and medicines, and be aware of your water usage. But we'll let Lydia explain more about this.
Bonjour, Nindish Kaz Nibin Gimiwan, Benezi Wazasu, Namki Waju Nindoji, Misquatezi Nindodam. The song that we're going to share is the Wichita song. It's the river song, and the way we sing it is the way the water moves. The water is always moving. Sometimes it moves so slowly that you barely think it's moving, and then it will speed up and get faster and faster, just like in the spring. When the river is flowing really fast in the spring. And then it's going to slow right back down again. So that's what we'll be representing with this starting off slow and getting faster and faster and then slowing it right down. Ready?
Sure. Okay, so before I talk, I guess, about like what is weaving, I think maybe I'll just briefly touch on what like indigenous knowledge is versus what Western science is. So indigenous knowledge is place-based knowledge. It's knowledge that's been gathered over thousands of years from observations, from living and like being and learning with and on the land. And the way to kind of like think about it is that it's very high context. So when I say high context, I mean it looks at not just one piece of the environment, but how that one piece is connected to all the other pieces. And then Western knowledge is sort of derived from all different types of ways of knowing and different folks, for the last however many centuries. And this knowledge kind of dissimilarly to indigenous knowledge is low context. So it maybe looks at only one piece of this larger puzzle of the environment or an ecosystem. Even though they are, they're different in their own ways, they also have a lot of similarities. They're gathered in a lot of the same ways. So like I had already mentioned, sort of like observing, analyzing, hypothesizing, both ways of knowing do the same thing. And so weaving knowledge systems is when we take indigenous and Western ways of knowing, and we use those both so that the integrity of each remains the same. And so to kind of give an analogy, I guess, we can think about if we were to like paint a landscape maybe. And if you were painting that landscape with only like one eye open, for example, if you had to close one eye, you would still see the landscape. You would still be able to paint what you can see. But if you open both eyes, you would be able to see more of a picture. You would have like more detail maybe, and things that you didn't even realize were there when your eye was closed. So that's sort of an analogy we can use, I think, when talking about weaving knowledge systems. We can help sort of solve problems or look at issues with a wider lens. You can see a bigger picture when you have more ideas, more ways of knowing, more ways of looking at the world. So when we weave knowledge, we basically can draw a wider understanding of an environmental problem. Again, I think I maybe mentioned this, but I'll say it again. Like, I think we can answer questions that we may have not been answering if we only looked at a problem in one way. So when we think about the environment or climate change, I think, let's say there was like an algae bloom or something like that in a lake because the temperature was warming. If we only looked at the Western reasons, we would say, okay, maybe this algae bloom happened because it's been warmer out. And if we only looked at the problem in terms of the algae, we could learn a lot of things, I'm sure. But if we brought in another way of knowing, we could then say, well, how does that algae then affect fish that someone might rely on for food, or are there medicines in and around the water that the algae is in? So again, just like broadening our scope, being able to maybe solve problems in different ways and more efficient ways, and in ways that help maybe more people. When I first learned about weaving, it was kind of this monumental moment in my life. I traveled to a place called Haida Gwaii, British Columbia. I was there for a semester away from my university, and that was the first time I had ever seen weaving knowledge, or like the bringing in of Indigenous knowledge and perspectives into science, into environmental management, into forestry. And so it was really sort of life-changing in the sense where I was like, why aren't more people talking about this? Why aren't I hearing about this happening back home in Thunder Bay? And it was just really empowering for me as an Indigenous person, as like someone who is Indigenous but also getting a Western academic degree. And kind of from that point on, I was like, how can I make everything I learn focused on this? So I tried to take different courses in my undergrad, and then, yeah, my master's, I was able to focus completely on weaving knowledge in ecotoxicology, so contaminants in the environment. And yeah, that's kind of my story to weaving.
Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
Miigwech Kanawea for watching. I learned a lot about two-eyed seeing today, and I hope you did too. Through our conversation with Lydia, we've gained insights into how this Indigenous teaching can enrich our perspectives. This guides us towards more sustainable actions, like mindful consumption and being stewards of our environment. Let's continue to embrace these holistic ways of knowing for a brighter, interconnected future.
Miigwech, Bamapi!